For today's topic, we are talking about none other than Ubisoft. So Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed Shadows has really gone from mistake to mistake over a seemingly small, in the grand scheme of things, insignificant decision to put Yasuke, the contested historical figure, as one of the main characters. But anyway, it all started off with originally a petition on change.org to cancel the game entirely. So it released, I think, a game up to, in this Game Rant article, it does say 73,000 signatures. That was at the time of the article's publication, which I believe was the 8th of July. I think last time I checked, it was actually up to about 75, 76, although now you can actually go in there and sign the petition to save Assassin's Creed Shadows because of cancel culture. That's a different topic for another day. And the Japanese gaming community were quite upset with the portrayal not only of Yusuke, but what that entails. And that's, again, not something that I think I can discuss, not being Japanese, but I would like to think I understand where they're coming from. I really do. But that's where it started. Then what happened was it came out that Ubisoft had stolen artwork, a flag in particular, from a volunteer group in Japan that do historical reenactments. And they stole it, they didn't credit it to them, and it only got picked up thanks to some eagle-eyed viewers out there. Worst of all, Ubisoft then came out and said, we apologize, but we're not going to pull the already printed special editions. They also not going to compensate the volunteer group, which is what a lot of people were asking for. It's like, well, okay, you're still going to use the promotional art because it's going to be such a huge ordeal to go back and change everything or to reprint them or whatever you got to do. But at least compensate the volunteer group. That's not something they're going to do. But interestingly enough, the Japanese government is now getting involved, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Lastly, and more recently, Ubisoft has officially not only acknowledged the Yusuke. Now, they did apologize for the whole stealing, and I say this very lightly, obviously, but it's quite serious, is that stealing the flag from the volunteer group. That they apologized for, but it was a non-apology as well. This is, again, a non-apology, but only because there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Again, the Japanese government has now gotten involved. They are investigating. And it all comes from what I believe is a very dumb decision. So naturally, we need to get out of the way that Assassin's Creed series has never been historically accurate. It's never been one that's taken place in historical time periods, and the devs have done a historically good job at recreating those time periods. I've said before in a previous video, Notre Dame Cathedral was only able to be rebuilt, or one of the reasons why it was being able to rebuild to such a precise degree was because of Assassin's Creed Unity and how the devs managed to capture how realistic the Notre Dame was in the game. Because it did such a good job, it was able to assist rebuilding Notre Dame Cathedral after the fire. You go over to ancient Greece and how it feels then, and just seeing all that architecture there and all the temples. It was just incredible. Even going to Iraq and Turkey, places like that, that's where the Assassin's Creed series shined, is taking you to a historical location. That also brings up an issue with Assassin's Creed Shadows, though, because a lot of the times in feudal Japan, as we've seen in the gameplay trailers, Ubisoft clearly hasn't done their homework. And in one of my previous videos, all it took was a Google search and you'd be able to figure out, oh, they did that wrong, they did that wrong. It is for entertainment purposes, and yes, we do understand that. One big problem is with previous Assassin's Creeds, you've never played as a historical figure. You've always played as a fictional protagonist who interacts with historical figures, albeit a little bit at a time. So again, in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you interact with Herodotus, you interact with Leonidas. You go back to Assassin's Creed 2, and you're interacting with Leonardo da Vinci. Or even Assassin's Creed 3, you're George Washington. So you interact with real people in a fictional series of events with a fictional protagonist. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, Ubisoft has decided to have a fictional protagonist alongside a controversial historical figure. And we say controversial because even though Yasuke was a real person, there are documents to prove that he was working under Oda Nobunaga. However, how much he actually did, to what extent he participated in some of the battles for Oda Nobunaga, and how closely he was, his relationship to Oda Nobunaga and how tight that was, remains to be seen. And then again, it's up in the air. So for Ubisoft to change the formula now, one of the most hotly anticipated entries in the series. I mean, how long have we been clamoring for an Assassin's Creed based in Japan, feudal Japan, even earlier, going or later? It doesn't matter. I think the Assassin's Creed series lends itself to Japanese history. It's honestly, they were made for each other. Then we got an Assassin's Creed based in Japan, and that was called Ghost of Tsushima, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. My feelings are about Shadows that there's no point in me playing this game because I've already played a better version of it. Anyway, a little bit of a catch-up, albeit a bit of an abridged version, bringing us to the apology today from Ubisoft. So it starts off by saying, to our esteemed Japanese community, a message from the Assassin's Creed Shadows development team. First, we want to express our heartfelt thanks to all the support for the Assassin's Creed series, which now has its own history spanning almost 20 years. Over this time, we've explored various settings and time periods and characters from the Assassin's Creed during the Third Crusade to Vikings in the 9th century England and countless more. For many of our team, creating an Assassin's Creed game set in feudal Japan has been a long, cherished dream. Since the announcement of Shadows, we have received many positive reactions, but also some criticism, including from you, our Japanese players. We share your passion for history and deeply respect your care for the historical and cultural integrity of your rich heritage. We would like to address a few points to clarify our intentions and creative decisions. Overall authenticity efforts. We've put significant effort into ensuring immersion and respectful representation of feudal Japan. However, they haven't. They just haven't. So in one of the trailers, I think it's the only trailer from memory, you see Oda Nobunaga, his retainers and his generals sitting in a house, in a building. The problem is, one, the building is too tall. It looks like a dojo from a school or a gym. Japanese ceilings were a lot lower. Number two, the flooring is wrong. The flooring is completely wrong. Number three, the retainers and the generals, the way they're sitting is insulting is not the word that comes to mind. It's incorrect. They're sitting on the lines of the floor mats, which again, you shouldn't do. And three, they're sitting, well, actually there's four. They're sitting incorrectly. They're sitting on their knees, almost like they're praying, which wasn't the custom in the feudal Japan. It was more that sitting cross-legged was more than acceptable. And number five, the clothing they were wearing is more akin to the Edo period rather than feudal Japan. So straight away, just in one trailer, you've got 5 simple problems that could be fixed with a Google search, and yet they're saying their efforts to ensure immersion and respectful representation of feudal Japan. Fine, it's a video game. I get it, but these are just simple, small, tiny little mistakes that anybody with access to the internet can figure out in less than 5 minutes, not let alone a company like Ubisoft and their development team. So it's all very strange to me. I really don't understand. I don't want to use the word rushed. It's certainly not rushed. It almost seems scrambled. Ubisoft has had a bad run lately. They've had, Skull and Bones come out. No matter what they're going to say, they're a bit of a laughing stock of the gaming community at the moment. Calling Skull and Bones a verse quadruple A video game has been memed to hell. So they needed a win. I don't know if Shadows was due to come out this year. Maybe it was due to come out next year. I'm not saying it was going to be delayed or it's released early, but just these small, tiny little details, not to mention the bigger things like stealing artwork from a volunteer group. Stealing is any form of artwork is wrong, but from a volunteer group, like it adds a little bit of extra saltiness to the whole thing. Anyway, back into the apology. However, our intention has never been to present any of our Assassin's Creed games, including Assassin's Creed Shadows, as a factual representation of history or historical characters. Instead, we aim to spark curiosity and encourage players to explore and learn more about the historical setting we get inspired by. Assassin's Creed Shadows is the first and foremost designed to be an entertaining video game that tells a compelling historical fiction set in feudal Japan. Our team extensively collaborated with external consultants, historians, researchers, and internal teams at Ubisoft Japan to inform our creative choices. Although it has been floating about this, so take this with a grain of salt, that the historians, the researchers, and all those people weren't Japanese. They were foreigners. They were people from the Westerners. I think from one rumor going around, again, take it with a grain of salt, is that they were based in France. They were French historians who specialized in Japanese history rather than actual Japanese historians, which would be the logical step. Anyway, again, take that with a grain of salt, but I wouldn't put it past Ubisoft, so take it with a big grain of salt. Despite these sustained efforts, we acknowledge that some elements in our promotional materials have caused concern within the Japanese community. For this, we sincerely apologize. All game footage presented so far is in development, and the game will keep evolving until launch, except the game comes out in 4 months. So if you're telling me that this gameplay footage was footage when the game was still in development, I find that really hard to believe. Considering it is only 4 months away from launch, I think when the footage came out, the game would have been 6 months away from launch. I doubt that was just in development footage. Sure, there's going to be some tweaking. They're going to be making adjustments and things like that. But it's not a beta. It's not an alpha build. It's closest to finished as it can be. Based on the constructive criticism we have received, we will continue our efforts until we put this game into your hands and beyond. 4 months. 4 months. Let's see what they can do. We also want to clarify that while we have been consulting with many people throughout the development process, they are in no way responsible for the decisions that have been taken by the creative teams in the interest of gameplay and entertainment. Consequently, we respectfully request that any criticism not be directed at our collaborators, both internal and external. And I couldn't agree more with that. This isn't the developer's fault. It is absolutely not the developer's fault. It is the higher-ups at Ubisoft. It's their decisions that lead to these situations. Ubisoft Japan or Montreal or whoever may have brought these decisions up, said, hey, look, I was just looking at this. Let's call, you got Yves Guillemot, but he's not involved in these decision makings. You've got Bruce who's making these decisions, and you've got, Kate that comes up and says, hey, Bruce, I found these issues. We should just change these. And Bruce says, oh, look, the budget, we got to get this done pretty quickly. Just leave it in there. No one's going to notice. Don't worry about it. Oh, we need a flag as well. I found this one. We went to Japan in 2019. Just steal their flag. It's really good. It's not the developer's fault. They're being forced to do this. Well, forced in the sense that they're doing their job. So we should never take it out on the developers. And I'm not saying you should take it out on anybody. But if you're so inclined that you need to just express your frustration, aiming at the CEO, aiming at the director, aiming at the people who are making the decisions, not the ground floor people. While we strive for authenticity in everything we do, Assassin's Creed games are works of fiction inspired by real historical events and figures. From the inception to the series has taken creative license and incorporated fantasy elements to craft engaging and immersive experiences. The representation of Yosuke in our game is an illustration of this, whose unique and mysterious life made him an ideal candidate to tell an Assassin's Creed story with the setting in feudal Japan as a backdrop. While Yosuke is depicted as a samurai in Assassin's Creed Shadows, we acknowledge that this is a matter of debate and discussion. We have woven this carefully into our narrative, and with our lead character, the Japanese shinobi Naoi, he is equally important to the game as our dual protagonists provide players with different gameplay styles. We greatly value our feedback and encourage you to continue sharing your thoughts respectfully. While we understand that meeting everyone's expectations is very difficult, we sincerely hope that when Assassin's Creed Shadows launches on November 15, players in Japan and around the world will appreciate the dedication, effort, and passion we have poured into it. So, yeah. I don't know why the decision was made to not play as two fictional protagonists. And I understand it's just for entertainment. I get it. But when it's the first Assassin's Creed game, recent Assassin's Creed game, since the switch to an RPG, where you're putting in a very controversial historical figure as the playable character, and in the trailer, in the gameplay trailer, they're showing Yosuke killing Japanese police in public. Like, there's no problem. So that brings up a whole bunch of other questions. Like, okay, because a lot of the petition on Change.org was originally because they believe that Ubisoft painted the Japanese people as racist, and I can't comment on that. But again, when you see footage like that, and they've taken Yasuke, who, again, controversial historical figure, not because he didn't exist, because of what he did in our records of that, and you show him killing Japanese people in a game based in Japan, you're already playing with fire. And then comes all the other stuff, and who knows what else we're going to see. Strangely enough, I'm reminded of Rise of the Ronin, which I'm finishing up playing at the moment. And also, so it wasn't set in feudal Japan. It was set during like when Japanese opened its doors to foreign trade and all the decisions and consequences that came with that. Rise of the Ronin was never involved in any of this historical inaccuracies because it didn't take itself seriously. It didn't pretend to be. And I'm not saying Assassin's Creed games pretend to be historically accurate. What I'm saying is that they put so much effort into painting the gaming world as history. There's so much effort put into crafting this world set in this time period that you'd think such a small decision as the Google searches and as things like this would be thought through. So you Rise of the Ronin again, it opens up and you've immediately got a glider and you're gliding around Yokohama, Edo, and Kyoto. So your sense of immersion isn't broken. You're playing a video game, not a work of a history book. So Ubisoft, it's kind of really strange to me. I don't know where I stand on this. As I said, I am not excited for Shadows, mostly because I don't. Ghost of Tsushima is my Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I'm more looking forward to Ghost of Tsushima 2 rather than playing this game. Also, because it's going to be bloated. You're going to have time savers. There's going to be so many small little micro things to find. It's not going to feel like I'm playing an exciting game set in one of the most exciting time periods in Japanese history, in world history. I'm going to feel like I'm doing chores, just tick, 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 tick things off, and then I'll be level gated to some areas. It just doesn't feel fun to me. So this isn't a game that's meant for me. I'm really excited to see what people think of this. Like, again, I know it's entertainment, but where do you draw the line? Where do you respect people's cultures? Again, you're basing a playable protagonist on a controversial historical figure. So where do you draw that line between entertainment and you start pushing those buttons, so to speak? So really interesting. We're going to see what happens here. Again, the Japanese government has gotten involved, so there's something. I guess it's going to be watch this space, really. So we'll see what happens. Dum 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 dum. Do 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 do. Da da dum dum da dum dum. Do da 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 da. Do 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 do. Do 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 dum 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 do 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 dum 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 do 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 da da dum dum da dum.